This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your special host for the day, Kara Shimborski, and this week I'm joined by two illustrious gutter dwellers, Zach McCrary.
Oh, what's up? How's it going?
And Kait Lamphere.
Hello.
And I am so delighted to be in charge of this episode, this very special episode today with the two of you, because I get to resurrect a format that, in my humble opinion, Kait and I perfected on a recent show that we did together. We are bringing back book versus book. But since there's three of us, we're doing book versus book versus book. It's a plot twist. But before we get into so we're just gonna, I was gonna say before we get into it, how have you been? How have comic books been? But I'm in charge. Mike's not here. So we're gonna go right to our very special topic. So I want you to tell me about the floppy single issue of a comic book that you chose for this episode that you wanted us to read and discuss in a group. Let's start with you, Kait.
I picked Heavy Vinyl #1. This is by Carly Ustin and Nina Vakuva. And this is something I read like years ago when it first came out, and I wanted to revisit it, see if it held up to my very good opinion of it that I recalled. This is about a girl who gets a job at a little record shop, and there are somehow 3 other employees, and also their very mature adult boss who's 24, which is over 10 years younger than I am.
Nope, don't like it. I hate it, in fact.
But she gets the job at this record shop, and there's something going on behind the scenes. She's kind of like shuffled out early during closing, and she's like, they probably have a secret band. And she comes back the next day to help run an event where they are hosting a band that she knows about and she's very excited about. And the singer of this known band goes missing. And they're like, oh no, this is our time. New girl, you get to know about this. We're actually a fight club who goes and rescues kidnapped band members.
Well, I see why you love this, but why did you pick it for this episode, Kait?
I really struggled to come up with something that I wanted, that I didn't think both of you would have read by now.
Okay.
And then also that like that I really enjoyed, and like I said, I wanted to revisit it. This was this came out a while ago. And
I had never heard of this. I had no idea what this was.
Yeah,
Same.
I think Brian was collecting this in single issues. Gosh, it was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. I should just look up the release date, but yeah, I remember absolutely loving this, and I wanted to introduce it to new readers.
Oh, well, thank you. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, this is on Hoopla, by the way, for anybody who's got Hoopla.
A wonderful benefit for many North American library card owners.
Yeah.
I feel I need to get a library card so I can be on Hoopla. I feel left out.
Yeah.
You super do. Everyone should have a library card. I know that there's controversy over people who have library cards in multiple cities that they don't live in just so that they can get more Hoopla borrows. But like, listen,
That's
you do what you got to do. It's better than torrenting. Do people still torrent? I don't even know. This is how not 24-year-old record shop owner I am.
Right. Yep.
Knowing pirates, yes, there are still people who are hardcore about torrenting.
So I went in cold on this book, and I have to tell you, Kait, I was distracted the entire time by thinking about how well staffed this shop was. I was like, what do you mean? For every shift, there are 4 people on the floor and a manager.
Right. Yeah, and you could see the entire store in one panel. Like, this was not a large store.
Yeah.
It's not like a Sam
no
Goody.
record shop can afford this many people.
That's what I was
just
thinking.
not
So,
happening.
like, of course there's something else going on. Of course there's like a band or they're the front for the mob or whatever. I would never in 1,000 years have picked Teenage Girl Fight Club, but a vigilante fight club. Oh, man. Well, Zach, what did you think about this book reading it?
I thought it was a lot of fun. Like right from the get-go, I started getting what was that movie called? Empire Records vibes right off the bat. I love that movie growing up. So like I started to feel those vibes because, you know, it's a bunch of teens in a record store. And then as it went on, I got into the characters. I liked all of their, like their quirks, and it made me, that ending for that first issue made me want to keep reading it for sure.
See, I just went back and looked at my notes, and I'd like to apologize for being a hater in my notes because I was just going off. I was like, Kate, these captions are so annoying. Why did we meet too many characters? Why did the hook not occur until the end? But it's like, of course, it's a cliffhanger. Like that's what it's there for. But like while I was reading it, I feel like I was getting a little distracted by the scene changes because we hop through a few different scenes, and every time there's like a little caption that says something like 10 action-packed minutes later, and I'm like, okay, but what was the action that happened in the 10 action-packed? Are you being sarcastic? I can't tell because you're writing and I just met you and I don't know your tone yet. So I feel like I just started like overthinking it. But I loved the, like, I felt like the aesthetics were sort of between the Western comics and manga style that we see in books like Fence, where like that's a direct inspiration of just like how the characters are styled and how they're interacting with each other. And I took a sneak peek in your notes and saw that you pointed out that they have like a magical girl pose to close out the issue, and just like more like manga trope type things, but in a book that's not explicitly pulling on cliches from that genre directly. So I think it's interesting that this is, because if this book was from like 6 or 7 years ago, then that kind of makes sense to me, because I feel like children of the 90s would have grown up with more like manga and anime influences than people older than them in America. And so by the time they were in their 20s or 30s and creating stuff, they would have those influences to pull on, whereas maybe earlier comics we wouldn't have had those as much, is my hot take about that. But yeah, it was super colorful. I did like the characters. I just felt like we met so many of them right away that I didn't have time to like latch on to one.
Yeah, I remember feeling that way when I first read it, for sure.
Yeah, the first issue was very much like the intro to the X-Men cartoon, where it's like, here's one thing about this person, that's who they are. Yeah. Here's one thing about this person, that's who they are. You know, that,
this book
but
was
that's,
like,
you know, that's to be expected, I think.
Yeah.
You know,
that's actually a good analogy, because this one was very like, this one's the goth one. This one's the like encyclopedic knowledge one. This one's the grown up who's 24.
The grown up. Also, I do want to say that I feel like the vibe that the writing was putting off, and like the feel I was getting fit perfectly with the art style. I felt like it all meshed really well. Like that art style made perfect sense for this comic, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, it felt very YA, but like younger YA, like maybe they were going for a middle grade audience that wanted to be reading stuff about teenagers kind of thing.
Right. Which is that what Boombox was for Boom Studios? Was that what they were going for with that imprint? Because I didn't know that imprint existed until we read this comic.
Oh yeah.
What?
For Boom.
I feel like that's true. Like very YA books.
I swear.
Zach, welcome to Boombox. Wasn't Lumberjanes done through Boombox? Like,
yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff where when you look at that, you're like, this makes sense now. All right.
Lumberjanes was the one that kept coming up when I was looking up Boombox, so I'm gonna have to read that now because I've seen a lot of praise.
It's long, but it's really good. Yeah.
Nice.
Do you think you'll both keep reading this book?
I would keep reading out of stubbornness because I trust your taste. But if I had, it's interesting because like if I had gotten this book as a number one to try something new, I genuinely don't know if I would have picked up the second one, purely because waiting a month between issue 1 and issue 2 with like just a cliffhanger to go off of, if I was like this crabby and annoyed by like some of the choices that were made in this issue, I might have forgotten to pick up issue 2. But since it is all conveniently packaged together for me to read with my library card, and because I trust Kate's taste, I'm just like, sure, I'll keep going. I should like this. I'll keep going.
Excellent.
No.
I will caveat that if I was in a comic shop and saw that book on a shelf, I wouldn't pick it up. Like, admittedly, I would not have picked it up. This book is, for me, the kind of book that if someone tells me, hey, this is really good, you should read it, that's what gets me in, and then that's what keeps me. Now, having said that, having had someone say, hey, check this out, and I did, I want to finish it. I want to see where it goes and what all of the story bits are going to wind up being. Because I bet it gets just nuts in a fun, goofy way.
Yeah. I feel like that's why we podcast. Hey, you should read this.
Totally.
Yeah, but that's also a great example of like, not every book is going to be for you. Like, you're not the target demographic for this book. So it's probably not going to appeal to you on the shelf. But like you said, if somebody you trust says you should read this, I appreciate that you would.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like, and she's exactly right. That's why I started my podcast. And that's why I enjoy doing this podcast, because there's lots of books out there that if I just saw it, I would pass right by it. But I might love it if I actually picked it up and read it. So I love getting people to tell me new books to check out.
Well, Zach, you dirty, filthy, lying cheater, it is your turn to tell us what to read. Except everyone's already read this book. So come on, my dude. Why did you pick the book that you picked? Tell us about it. What did you pick, and what's the summary?
I chose Hawkeye #1, of course, the one and only Matt Fraction, art by David Aja, with colors by Matt Hollingsworth. I picked this one because I saw us all picking #1s, and I was like, and then we were talking in chat about books that hold up, and that's where my brain went immediately, was to this run of Hawkeye, because to me, there is no other Hawkeye book that matters. This is the one. Like, this is the only one, but it truly was a moment in time where Hawkeye was everything. You know what I mean?
So true.
And so that's why I picked it.
For our listeners, the reason I insulted Zach so eloquently at the start of this is because I was like, no, we're supposed to argue about which one's the best one, but we can't do that if you pick Hawkeye. Like, we all know Hawkeye is the good one. Like, God damn it.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's great. Because, it's been a minute since like I reread that Hawkeye run maybe like a year and a half ago, something like that. But like with the knowledge that I was sitting down and reading the whole thing, so concentrating just on the first issue through the lens of, is this a good #1? Does it do what it needs to do to hook new readers? That was a good new like framing for which I could enjoy it. So I do thank you, despite my crass behavior towards you. It is worth discussing, because reading this back to back with Kait's pick, because I was like being a brat about like, oh, like the transitions, they're just like, so I just overthought them so much. And then like reading Hawkeye #1, the use of color palette to indicate the shifts in scene or timeline, because this is a #1 that does a lot of complicated things jumping around through space and time. Just by changing the color, they let you know that you're in a different spot, which was super effective, especially if you're like looking, I don't know, I feel like you didn't even have to really be looking for it to be able to be like taken along in the story with you.
Oh, for sure. Hollingsworth is a master at palette changing. Like, he's really good at setting scenes and it helps the story flow. Like, everything about this book just works. Like, it's a well-oiled machine. And I mean, like, David Aja's art, it's so simple and gritty and just makes sense for this story. Like, that's important to me when I'm reading comics. Like, if the art doesn't fit the story, as I said earlier about Heavy Vinyl, it's not going to work for me. And for some reason, like, that style with this like deconstructed Hawkeye, this beaten up normal dude who just happens to be an Avenger, and it just works, and it catches you from the first page, which is what I really appreciate. Because I bought this book, like, it came out and I saw it on a shelf and I bought the #1, and it hooked me from #1. So I like, there was nobody telling me with this one like, hey, you should read this, it's really good. I just did, and it caught me from issue 1, which is probably also why it popped into my brain. But like, the very first page, is him falling out a window saying, okay, this looks bad. And it's like a splash page, and it's just perfect. It's a perfect opening, and then you just see him falling and nearly killing himself on a car, and you get to know that, like, you get reminded, like, yeah, this guy, he's a superhero, but he's just a normal dude, and he's not like Batman level normal dude superhero either, you know, because then he spends half the thing beaten up and bandaged, and he's in a hospital, and yeah, I love that about this issue. Is it what are the odds that an issue like a superhero comic will open up and it will immediately put the hero in the hospital recovering from injuries? You know, I love that.
True.
And Pizza Dog, you can't go wrong with Pizza Dog. Like, what a great side character, iconic. I
had forgotten that Pizza Dog was introduced in the first episode. So the first issue. So for listeners who are newer to comics and were not reading comics 10 years ago when everyone was reading Hawkeye, this number one issue, like Zach said, it very effectively sets up Hawkeye, aka Clint Barton, as the kind of like everyman hero. Yes. And his central conflict is there's these gangsters that want to evict everybody from the apartment building that he's living in. So he shows up with a big bag of cash and is like, I'll buy the apartment building, just like leave us alone. And the gangsters want nothing to do with it. And they also have a dog with them. And when they start like shooting at Hawkeye to get him to go away, the dog attacks them, and then he gets attacked, and then Clint takes him to the animal hospital, and so many fights ensue. Yeah. But you're just like, but this dog that they're now best friends forever.
And why does the dog do it? Because Clint fed him pizza on the way into the building, and they became friends. I love that he's like, can I pet your dog? And I love those mafia guys with the bro. Everything's, no, bro, dog bites, bro, you know? And dog bites. It's true. It bit one of the mafia guys. But yeah, exactly. It sets him up as this normal dude in like a kind of normal situation where people are being, you know, kind of pushed out of their home in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and the only caveat is that he is an Avenger and has Avengers money and tries to do the right thing and help these people, and in the process, just stuff goes haywire. And this, you're right. This issue fully sets you up for all of that. You get to see Clint try things, fail at them, but just keep getting up and trying them, and that's just the character that he is. He gets knocked down and he gets up again. He's Chumbawamba.
Kait, how long has it been since you've checked out this book?
I read it right before the Disney Plus show where they introduced Kait something.
Kate Bishop.
Yes, thank you. I was like, Kate Barton. Nope, that's not it.
The other Hawkeye.
Yes, exactly. And I really liked that show. But I wanted to read this comic book because I knew that it was going to pull heavily from it. Mm-hmm. So it's been a few years, yeah. But I felt like, I feel like I remember thinking this when I originally read it too, that there is a lot that happens in issue 1, and it does kick off the action, but also you really have to pay attention. This is not like a casual before bed read if it's your first time reading it, which is where I read most of my comics. So I think that it was probably the number one, reading it the first time was probably like quite a bit. But I pushed through it because I knew it was going to be a good book. And now that I'm rereading it, I'm like, yes, this is fantastic. Everything is done correctly.
It really does age well over time.
Totally. It's deceptive because it seems like a very simple book. If you just opened it and just leafed through, you would think that this is a very simple, straightforward book. But there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of nuance in just what Clint's saying and how he's his stance, and just everything that's going on matters. There's no wasted motion, no wasted text boxes.
Yeah, I feel like I would not like Clint as a person if I knew him in person, but I love him as a character in a comic book. Like,
that's the best kind of character, though. Yeah, that's like all the good characters. I don't want to be roommates with Loki. I just think that he'd be really funny to watch the adventures of, like, you know.
Yeah, I also love these covers. Like, I'm obsessed with them. These like dual purples with black and white art. Like, it's there's something that is both like simple and just elegant and I don't know, minimalist in a good way. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They're great.
What also like stands out, that's probably what attracted Zach to it in the comic book shop all those years ago.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, because I didn't give a crap about Hawkeye. I wasn't a Hawkeye guy, but I saw the cover and I was like, what's that? It draws your eyes. And I mean, poor David Aja, like when that show came out, like they totally used his covers as, for the posters and things like that. And he got nothing for it. He was very vocal. Like they didn't pay me for like using my art style for this. Yeah. But it's still like that shows how iconic it is. Like when they did this character, they were like, well, this is where we got to pull from.
Yeah. That's so unfortunate. That's bumming me out.
It's sad because he does a bang up job on this entire run. But Kara, what do you have for us?
I also picked a superhero book. So we're going back. We're going back in time to my personal comic book journey. I picked Catwoman #1 by Ed Brubaker and Darwin Cook. And we had kind of a journey all finding this issue to read, because I was like, guys, it's so easy. It's on Hoopla. It's in Catwoman Volume 1. Yeah, it's in Catwoman Volume 1, Trial of the Catwoman, after the like original graphic novel Selina's Big Score, where she's not even in the Catwoman suit at all, and it's just like straight up noir storytelling. And then I didn't even know this, that there was another like 4-part story just about Slam Bradley, the private eye, that is like in between, that like Kait accidentally read because I told her the wrong page to start at. And then like 120 pages into this collected volume, that's when you get to Catwoman #1. And I'm like, God damn it.
Wow.
Comics, why? So I chose this because when I was younger, I like, and this is still true today, but like Catwoman is one of my favorite comic book characters. She's the first superhero character that I like systematically read as much as I could get my hands on about her. So like the local library system that I had access to as a teenager, they had actually like a lot of her collected editions. So I read like anything that I could get my hands on. And this was like a little bit after this Darwin Cook Brubaker series had started, and I was like still a few years out from going to a comic book shop. So like by the time I actually got to a shop, I remember seeing Darwin Cook covers like on the wall of the new floppies, but I had mostly experienced that run through its reputation through like other DC media. So I had like the DC Comics Encyclopedia that talked about Catwoman's history on one of the pages, and they like had some of the Darwin Cook stuff, or some of it was in, they had like some collections of Catwoman stories like through different eras, because like her costume changed every decade, just like Wonder Woman's. And this was kind of a new moment for the character, where instead of her being like the glamorous jewel thief who has a thing with Batman, they were kind of rebranding her as like a gray area vigilante, like kind of in the Huntress vein, where you're just like, she could be a good guy, she could be a bad guy. They kind of set that up in this #1, where she has this like ongoing monologue through the whole thing. She's like, you get the sense that she's been through something traumatic, because it opens up on her being in therapy with Dr. Leslie Tompkins of Batverse fame, as like the local clinic doctor that Batman trusts if he's injured. So you know that she's been through some stuff. You find out through this dialogue that they're having that everyone thinks Selina Kyle, Catwoman's alter ego, is dead. So she kind of has this opportunity for a clean slate. She goes to this safe house that she used to have in kind of like a more like less affluent area of Gotham. And she shows up, and one of her friends who's a sex worker shows up at like the same time. And she's like, oh my God, Selina, you're alive. People are killing us. Help. And I was like, what? We kick off the new series. Like, we know who the character is. We've kicked off the new series. Selina is like reclaiming her mantle as Catwoman, but through a new context. And right away we have sex workers dying. So I was like, well, I've definitely never read this issue before. I definitely know the run that this is part of, but all of this is brand new information. And oh man, is violence against women really the only plot that we can give female superheroes in the early 2000s DC? Really? But you know what? Darwin Cook's art is amazing. It does like this pinup style, like retro pinup style. He also did Justice League The New Frontier around this time. And it is the choices that he made as an illustrator definitely play up the fact that Catwoman is a like stereotypically beautiful woman, but I kind of don't care. Like I know I usually like rag on stuff like that, but it was more like an eye roll. And I think because it's so like pin-uppy and campy, I'm kind of like, okay, but you also gave her combat boots and she like physically shoved herself away from Batman, which I thought was a really important, like symbolic thing to happen in that book, to be like, I am not just like your on and off again girlfriend. I'm here to do my own thing, to like set up the new storyline for her.
She didn't just do that. She jumped off of a building backwards
Totally.
away from him. I'm going to punctuate my sentence with a giant leap.
I love her drama.
And Batman's reaction is kind of like, oh, all right, that's cool. Bye.
He's like, I'm supposed to be the dramatic one here.
Yeah. You took my thing.
Like, I'm the one with the cape. Oh,
I really like that. I get a lot of Katharine Hepburn vibes from the way Darwin Cook draws her face. And I don't know why, but I really like that. Like, I really like a Katharine Hepburn Catwoman for some reason.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been reading quite a bit that DC's been putting out about like for like younger readers, Batgirl, Catwoman, like that whole group of like ladies, I guess.
Yeah.
And I haven't actually gone back and read any of the like the actual Catwoman comics, so it was kind of nice to go back and actually read some of this. And I think that this was like, I mean, I've only read this one issue, but I feel like this is a good place to start me reading it, because you have this transition and it opens and it tells you everything that you need to know. You know, like Selena Kyle's been declared dead. She has some contacts still left in Gotham. She's got this new suit. Great place to start. New suit day. Yeah.
New suit day.
And like you said, like they're like reestablishing the character as being more like of a gray character. And there was a point in the comics where she made the observation that Batman is black and white, and that she exists in this like gray area. And I feel like that's a really good summary of what I do know of their relationship and the way that they communicate, and like the drama between them.
The drama's so good. That whole scene was great though, because like when she was having that monologue about the difference between her and him, she was watching him battle the Riddler and the Riddler's goons. She was like perched up on a Gotham rooftop where we usually see Batman doing his perching. And she's like in the shadows. So like everything about her positioning is like what we usually see from Batman, where he's just kind of like lurking and looking down on everything. And she's looking down on him, and he's having this like, I thought, very cartoony fight scene with the Riddler and company, and it's like very brightly lit, and it almost looked like the Bruce Timm verse style of animation for how the characters were looking. And so it was a really good contrast to kind of visually underscore that she was in the shadows. She had a little more latitude of what she was doing, but he was like locked in this dichotomy that he couldn't really escape. So I thought that was very well done.
Yeah, I like that we get in this first issue, and I'm curious how far it goes, but this idea that she's trying to figure out who she is. Like, am I the suit? Is the suit me? Like, am I me in a suit? Like, where does Catwoman end and Selena begin? Like, and we're getting her trying to figure that part of her life out. And the symbolism of throwing away the purple Catwoman costume, I thought was really interesting, and like giving her a fresh start with the new look. I like that. Also, I never really cared for the purple Catwoman costume, so I was like, cool. I didn't know that this was the issue where that Catwoman costume comes in, so that was a fun surprise for me because I like that one. Yeah.
Did you notice when she throws the costume away, it kind of like bundles up with the tail behind it and the mask forward, and it looks like a cat running away, like the way that it's bundled up.
Really?
I really like
no,
that.
I did not. I'm gonna have to find. I'm scrolling now.
I forgot her purple suit had a tail, and she kept like going back to the tail thing. And I'm like, how many people complained about this tail that they've like mentioned it, shown it, done a close up of her ass in the leather suit saying no tail, like specifically saying no tail.
It totally does look like a cat freaked out running away. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Very nice design choices. But yeah, so I definitely don't remember reading this issue ever before, but I know that I want to continue because you know what? It's been a minute since I've read a Catwoman thing because I feel like, do you remember, oh God, how many years ago now when DC did I don't even know how many rebrands they've done. The one where like the first issue with with Batman and Catwoman was them like definitely having sex on a rooftop, and like none of it was really hidden. It was like explicit as they could have gotten without actually showing anything pornographic, and it was like so controversial, and like, is it even sexy if they're just showing it that overtly? And I just remember being so exhausted that it was even happening that I just like decided to not read any new Catwoman stuff because I was like, oh, if that's what you're doing with the character, I'm not super interested. I'm much more interested when she like shaved her head and wore combat boots, and now I'm like, all right, she had short hair and wore combat boots. I could just read that arc. Thanks, Darwin Cook. Thanks, Ed Brubaker.
I am interested in this too because you open with her as herself going to therapy, doing a lot of self-reflection, figuring out how she interacts with her, like with being Catwoman. And I feel like there's a noticeable shift in the way that she like carries herself and the words, the kind of like syntax that she uses, the word that she picks when she talks, like there is a difference between her as herself and her in the costume. But at the same time, like you still see her without the costume on the rooftop lurking, leaping from rooftop to rooftop. Like there is, you know, they aren't just two different, like totally different personas. Like she might be,
she's there.
Yeah. She's there in both ways, you know, very, very much the same person.
And she goes out running across roofs basically because she's been having these awful dreams and not sleeping well. And after going out and doing that and throwing a brick at bad guys for Batman, she says like, I'm going to sleep really well tonight. You know, she needed that. Like that is who she is. She needed to be doing that. And probably the dreams were happening because of the fact that she wasn't being true to her nature, to herself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the vibe that I got. So I thought that was really good. But it's Ed Brubaker, so I should not, you know, it's Ed Brubaker. Of course he's going to have something good like that in there.
Well, so like I just I reread Gotham Central like last week. So going from that and being like, oh, right, like right after that, you went to this. No wonder I love it. It's like Bat adjacent. That's my favorite zone. I just want to be Bat adjacent. I don't care about Bruce. He can... Until they make him a fun party boy again, like I'm hanging out with whoever else is in Gotham and doing their thing, you know?
I totally vibe with that. I feel Bat adjacent a lot of the times as well because I go through Batman fatigue a lot, and you know, sometimes you just want some Robin or some Catwoman.
We're just overexposed to Batman all the time, man. You know what I was thinking about for a minute before I realized we would have to do so much backstory explanation. It would not be a good number one. The like, oh my God, I'm blanking. When Tim Drake did his own thing after Batman died, but wasn't really dead, and he was like, not Red Robin, but like Red Wing or something like that, and he just like had a whole. See, you don't like. I'm getting a blank face. You guys don't even know what I'm talking about. He like had his own like totally different non-Robin identity for a hot minute there, and it's driving me crazy that I can't remember his
Kara, he's had
ego.
like 3 of those because they just can't make anything stick for the poor guy.
For every Nightwing, you're just going to have whatever Timmy Drake was doing for 10 years. Like,
do you remember for a hot minute there, they were like, his new code name is Drake, and everyone was like, that's dumb.
I forgot about that. Oh my god. So I feel like I can't in good conscience make us vote, like decide on what the best book is, because we all know it's Hawkeye, and like there's no point debating it. But I think we can unpack some nuance here, because we've read some number ones now, and we've sort of been dancing around what do you need in a number one. So like, what do you need to make a number one issue really work and drag you in as a reader?
I mean, I feel like it needs to have good. I mean, a number one is for exposition, but I mean, like, it needs to introduce all of your important characters. It needs to set it in the world that it's in. So, like, for example, in Catwoman, that's a part of a much larger world with a lot of backstory. So you needed to know what Batman was up to, where Catwoman had been, what the deal with her like Selena Kyle real world persona is. Like, she's dead, but she's not dead, you know. And then like with Hawkeye, you know, it starts with us knowing that like he's taking a break, he's going back home, he immediately gets beat up.
Oh baby.
And then like with Heavy Vinyl, this is not a part of a larger world, so I think that it's interesting, like the differences in between like just a mini series and then something that is part of a larger like serialized character. With Heavy Vinyl, like you had to know what your characters were up to. Like, she starts at a record shop. These are the people that she works with. These are the people that she's interested in getting to know. And then you also have more of like, it's establishing it enough to know that this is pretty much the real world. And what is relevant to her is the bands that come into this store and like the band scene in the town. So you're just like, you're establishing where they're at, like where their place is in their world. Yeah.
Honestly, my favorite like setup, like scene setting part of Heavy Vinyl was when our protagonist was like getting picked up from work by her dad in his like minivan. And she's just like, Dad, your music is terrible. And he's like, well, driver picks the tunes. And you're just like, it's just like that moment of a teenager interacting with an actual adult and not a 24-year-old of like setting the tone of like, all right, these are teenagers.
Right.
Let's jot that down right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that sequence because it does, like, I remember being that teenage music snob who thought that everyone else's music sucked compared to mine. And I really appreciated that, because I totally did that to my parents. We're like, could we listen to Soundgarden, please? Like, you guys don't know who Soundgarden is? Gosh! You know, edgelord Zach.
My parents, unfortunately, had great musical taste that I didn't realize until later, because they were listening to like the Cranberries and 10,000 Maniacs and Alanis Morissette and like YouTube and stuff. And like later, I confronted my mom when I was in like my 20s, and I was just like, Mom, I know about Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill because you listened to it when I was a kid. And she's like, I would never have listened to that album in front of you. I'm like, then why did I already know all of the lyrics when I was a teenager and found it again? Like, come on.
Oh, that's great. But with number one issues for me, within the first 5 pages, there's got to be something that hooks me completely, and that could be a lot of different things. So with Hawkeye, like I said, we open on that splash page, and immediately I'm in. Like I love that splash page, and so that book really quickly catches you with just action and seeing Hawkeye take a dive. I really like the opening for Heavy Vinyl because, like you're saying, like we immediately get this character running down the street, headphones on, Walkman, takes a dive, real sad about the Walkman. We get to know her, like, boom, right away. We know who this person is, and we move forward from there. And with Catwoman, I like the opening to Catwoman as well, because at first you don't see Selena. You see someone, working and getting picked up, and bad things happen. And that's not good. But at the same time, you're like, oh, who is that guy? What's going to happen? And then we go to Selena and you're immediately like, I see where this is going. And now I'm hooked. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be that hook. Like, if you don't do it within the first couple pages, people are going to lose interest. And I think that all three of these books did something that made that work. There is no one thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was thinking about how, because I can't remember the last time I read a bunch of number ones all in a row. Because even if you're going to your comic book shop weekly, you're not always going to have just like a stack of number ones. You're going to have various stages of the story. So it's actually like kind of rare, I think, to sit down and just be like number one, number one, number one. So reading all these together, I was kind of like, okay, we've got our setting, we've got our stakes, and thinking about just like there's external conflict, and if not an internal conflict, at least like some kind of internal like decision-making process that we're seeing that helps you understand who the character is. Like with Heavy Vinyl and Catwoman, our protagonists are kind of figuring out their place in the world. So we're like, okay, I know that this character is questioning and figuring out who they were. I think with Hawkeye, Clint is very sure of his place in the world, even though he's injured, because he's saying like, oh, I'm an Avenger, but Steve Rogers isn't here to stop me from beating your face. So it's like he knows who he is, but instead of having like his internal conflict is more about the dog. Like he keeps saying like, it's not my dog, it's the dog. And you're like, you big softy, you know that dog's coming home with you. So it's like less of an explicit internal conflict, but they're still like they're learning something about themselves as we're watching it. And that makes us invested in their journey as a character.
I agree.
Thank you.
I have nothing to add to that because that was a very good statement.
I was great. I was great right there.
Kara, give yourself a high five. That was mwah, chef's kiss.
Well, I do think it's important to talk about number ones because, Zach, like you said earlier, we love comics and we want people to read comics, and a number one volume issue is usually the easiest place to be like, I'd like you to try reading this comic book, as opposed to being like, I'd like you to try Superman number 874, please. And then being like, no, why would I do that?
It's a great jumping on point.
Yeah. And so often if I don't have something that I am already reading or that I already want to talk about when I come on the show, I will pick up a number one to try it and see if I want to talk about that. So like I do select number ones as the thing that I want to see if I will get into the story more, or like even if I just go to the library, I'm like, okay, volume one of something that I haven't read, okay, grabbing that regardless of what it is. So yeah, I think that, and sometimes I don't even make it through the first issue in a first volume of something, and so yeah, it's interesting to reflect on what might make me stop reading.
I've been cringing a little bit about a specific number one because, you like have your personal repertoire of comics to recommend to people who don't really read comics. And you're like, well, if you don't really read comics or if you don't really want superhero stuff, I've got some recommendations. And you keep like reusing the same list. And maybe it's been a while since you've read them, but you keep using it because you're like, I know this is good. I will not stop telling people to read The Wicked and the Divine, and I keep forgetting that in the first issue somebody's head explodes very graphically, and so I'm just kind of like, oh, well, that's what people know about me now. I'm the girl who recommends the exploding head comic book. Welcome to comics. Keep reading. Hope you stay around.
Just trust me. There's more. There's more than just head explosions.
There's more than just
unless
head
you want head
explosions.
explosions.
Yeah.
In which case, that's a great comic to keep reading. So it does its work as the number one, but perhaps I should revisit my strategy of trying to hook people on comic books using that one.
I I find myself more and more, and this is not like an elitist knock or anything like that, but I find myself more and more mostly reading independent comics, and I think it's because I like having a beginning and an end and being able to move on. And so I'm always picking up number ones, sometimes to my own detriment, like to my wallet's detriment, because I almost every time I wind up picking up at least one number one, and then I'm like, shit, I really like this. This is another book that I have to pick up. You know?
No, it's good.
Yeah, damn it, it's so good. Why did I do this? Why did I do this to myself? But like, it just happened with Kill All Immortals. I don't know if you've heard of that book, but the first issue was so much fun, and I really liked it. Check it out. But damn it was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think one of my favorite things about being a comic book reader is finding new stories with number one issues and giving them a try, and getting to be the person then who tells other people, dude, this is a good book, you got to check it out. You know what I mean? I love sharing that kind of stuff. So for me, number ones are super important and some of the best parts about reading comics.
What a wholesome story we've drawn together with our number one tapestry. I have had such a ball with the two of you chatting about this today. Thank you so much, Zach and Kait, for joining me for this fabulous discussion. Thank you, Nick, for being our proof listener and helping us troubleshoot some technical difficulties before we started recording. Thank you, Zander, for editing. Thank you, Mike, for hopping in for a Batman moment to make sure we were all set. And thank all of you, our wonderful listeners. Remember, comics are good, and so are you.